영국 런던 이스트엔드의 화이트채플로 가봅시다. 잭더리퍼라고 들어보셨는지요? 1888년에 영국의 끔찍했던 미제 사건의 살인범을 부르는 별명입니다. 립은 찢다는 의미고 잭은 우리말로 홍길동씨 또는 아무개씨라고 할 수 있으니 칼잡이 아무개라고 불리는 신혼미상의 살인범인 셈이죠. 역사학자가 하는 잭더리퍼 투어가 있다고 해서 으슥한 밤 시간을 기다려 참가했습니다. 함께 가실까요?
So welcome to the Jack the Ripper tour. My name's Andre. I'm a historian, tour guide, lecturer. Most importantly for this evening, a ripperologist. Yes, if you're not sure what that is, as an historian who studies the murders professionally, I'm doing this now for over 30 years, my pleasure to tour for you this evening. You'll know that a man appears with a top hat and a cape, and of course in his hand he has a doctor's bag. And he approaches the woman. He wants to know how much it's going to cost for the business, shall we say. And back then, to be with one of these women would cost you twopence, 2 old English pence. But the man needn't worry, if you haven't got the twopence, she's still going to go with you for a stale loaf of bread or perhaps just a glass of gin. So life is very cheap here in the East End of London.
그는 여성들에게 접근해서 일단 목을 졸라서 죽인 다음에 칼로 목을 베고 가장 잔인한 방법으로 몸뚱이를 난자했다 합니다.
Sometimes he takes the heart, sometimes he takes the kidney, often he removes the uterus. So he really earns the name Jack the Ripper. Shortly after, a policeman discovers the body, blows his whistle. The investigation begins.
도대체 잭더리퍼는 누구인가? 그게 쉬운 질문은 아니었죠. 다들 아시다시피 잭더리퍼는 끝끝내 잡히지 않았으니까요. 200명이나 되는 용의자가 있었음에도 용의자 중에는 분의 왕실 귀족도 있었고 빅토리아 여왕의 의사, 오스카 와일드, 루이스 캐롤 같은 유명 인사도 있었다 합니다.
The list goes on and on and on. One of the questions I'm often asked leading the tour is if the killer was never caught, why do we call him Jack the Ripper? It's all because of letters that were received by the Central News Agency. Often written in red ink, they were signed Jack the Ripper.
내가 살인자다 하고 보낸 그 편지가 있었는데 알고 보니까 자기네 회사 신문 판매 그 부수를 높이려고 한 그 기자가 버린 자작극으로 판명이 되었어요. 대실망이었죠.
So what does Jack do? Well, he kills 5 women in just 10 weeks, between the 31st of August and the 9th of November 1888. The victims are Mary Ann Nichols, Annie Chapman, Elizabeth Stride, Catherine Eddowes and Mary Jane Kelly. They're all prostitutes. They're all alcoholics. They're all in their 40s, with the exception of the last victim, Mary Kelly, who is only 25. In Victorian times, this was known as Flower and Dean Street. But sadly, it was mostly demolished in the 1970s. All that survives today are these buildings that we're standing next to. This had the reputation of being the foulest and most dangerous street in London. This is where you'd find many of the notorious lodging houses. If you're not familiar with a doss house, can I ask you to imagine a filthy, dirty guest house where you have to share a bed with a total stranger.
저 관짝같이 생긴 저 박스 안에 사람이 들어가서 자는 거예요. 다다다다다다다 수십 명이 자는 거죠. 그런데 이제 밤에 자다가 얼어 죽거나 뭐 병 나서 죽는 사람이 있대요. 그럼 저 관이죠. 저 박스를 통째로 갖다가 묻었다 합니다.
As long as you don't mind the fleas, the lice, the rats and the other vermin that shared the room with you. And to stay in such a place would cost you 4 pence a night. If you didn't have the 4 pennies, maybe you spent your money on booze, you could pay 2 pennies and sleep standing up with your arms over a rope. And we believe that is the origin of the expression, a hangover. Absolutely true. 6 o'clock the next morning, they cut the rope. You get a very rude awakening. Can you imagine starting the day like that? Not a pleasant day. And now, during her last week alive, Mary Ann Nichols, Jack the Ripper's first victim, was lodging on this street. Wall, just over there towards the right, that's part of a modern structure. Body was found on the 31st of August, 1888. About 20 to 4 in the morning, a man called Charles Cross is walking to work. Passes down Bucks Road and discovers lying on the ground before the entrance to a stable yard the body of a woman.
사건 현장 최초 발견자는 거리가 너무 어두워서 잘 보이지가 않았다고 합니다. 슬쩍 보니까 치마가 허리까지 올라가 있어서 성추행을 당한 거라고 판단을 해서 서둘러 경찰관을 부르러 갔죠. 5분 후에 경찰이 왔는데 껌껌하니까 이제 조명을 비췄어요. 그랬더니 깜짝 놀랐죠. 이 왼쪽 귀에서 오른쪽 귀까지 이 목이 다 잘려서 아주 처참한 상태였죠. 그래서 이 복부를 가르고 내장을 다 꺼낸 것으로 밝혀졌습니다. 너무 끔찍하죠.
One of the first things the police have to do is try and identify the victim. They identify the body as Mary Ann Nichols, often known as Polly to her close and dear friends. Once the police know who she is, they need to find out where she'd spent her last day alive. So they speak to the locals. They discover she spent most of that day drinking in a pub in this area called the Frying Pan Pub. Just after midnight, she leaves the pub and she makes her way in that direction towards her usual lodging house. There she asks for a bed for the night. The lodging house master, quite rightly, demands the 4 pence, the price of a bed up front. She replies, "I ain't got it." He says, "Right, you know the rules. Get out there, find yourself a man. Once you got the money, come back, bed will be waiting for you." She replies, "Don't you worry about me. I'll soon get my DOS money. See what a jolly bonnet I've got now." Sadly for her, she does meet a man that night. But of course the man she met became Jack the Ripper, and she became his first official. We're standing very close to what was formerly number 29 Andrew Street. This is where Annie Chapman was murdered.
그녀는 그렇게 잭더리퍼의 두 번째 희생자가 되었습니다. 1888년 9월 8일 새벽 6시경에 시신이 발견되었고요. 목이 2번 거졌는데 이번에는 너무 깊게 거져서 거의 목이 거의 잘라진 그런 몸통에서 분리가 돼서 잘라진 정도였습니다.
He then slits open the stomach, takes out the intestines, throws them over the shoulder, removes her bladder and her uterus, takes them away as grisly soup.
저 길 건너 코너에 있는 술집이 텐벨스 펍이라고 유명한 곳입니다. 잭더리퍼 살인 사건에서 빠지지 않고 등장하는 중요한 술집이기도 합니다. 그의 희생자들이 모두 저기서 술을 마셨고 아마도 잭더리퍼도 그랬을 거라 추측하기도 해요.
And I know the pub very well. It used to be my home. I used to live above the pub. And I can tell you now, I didn't believe in ghosts till I moved into the 10 Bells. Changed my mind very quickly. It is an extremely haunted place. And one of the ghosts is often seen lurks in the basement where the toilets are. When I was living, there's lots of women come running up the stairs who never guess what happened to me. I said, I bet I can. I've heard it so many times, but go on, tell me anyway. I was in the ladies' toilets, I was washing my hands, and a woman in a green Victorian dress walked straight through the wall. And the description was always the same. A lady in a green Victorian dress. Now we had lots of psychics and mediums visit the pub, and many of them claim it's the ghost of Lucky Lizzie, Jack the Ripper's third victim. Now she was known to drink at the pub, so it could work.
1888년 9월 30일에 더블 이벤트에 대해서 이야기해 보겠습니다. 제 두 명을 하룻밤에 죽인 유일한 경우였죠. 엘리자베스 스트라이드와 캐서린 에도가 그의 세 번째 희생자였습니다.
Elizabeth Stride's body was found at 1 a.m. A man called Louis Dimshut is on his pony cart. He's making his way down Burder Street, tries to turn into Duckfield's yard, and suddenly the pony stops. Now today, she's often referred to as Lucky Lizzie. And the reason for the nickname is Lucky Lizzie only had a throat cut across. She did not suffer the appalling abdominal mutilation that Jack inflicts on his other victims. Why did the Ripper treat her differently? We believe the answer is the killer was asleep. He's over the body, he's got the knife in hand, he's cutting the throat when he hears the clip-clop of the pony's hooves. Last thing he wants is to be caught red-handed, because in those days they hanged him for murder. So we suspect what happens is Jack the Ripper makes his escape. He's got this bloodlust, this desire to rip, to maim, to slash, to mutilate. Can't do that to Lucky Lizzie. So is that perhaps the reason why he kills again that very same night? We'll try and get half the group this side if we can. And welcome to Parliament Court. And I brought you here to show you where the women would have spent quite a large part of their time. Because if they did meet a man who wanted some business, you needed somewhere to do it. You couldn't do it in the common lodging house. So it took place in alleys such as this, against the very walls that you're standing. And we know that all the Ripper victims worked in this alleyway at some point, including Catherine Eddowes. And she became the next victim on the night of the double event. 1:45 a.m, 30th of September, PC Edward Watkins enters Mitre Square and discovers lying on the ground the body of Catherine Eddowes.
목이 베었고 복부를 갈라 내장을 꺼내서 그걸 어깨에다가 널어 놓았죠. 아유 끔찍해라. 신장과 자궁이 적출되었으며 얼굴을 막 난도질을 하고 코, 눈, 귀도 잘랐습니다. 기가 막힌 건 그녀는 전날 밤인 9월 29일 저녁에 술이 취한 채로 길거리에서 자고 있다가 경찰에 의해서 유치장에 감금되었고 새벽 1시경에 풀어났다는 점입니다. 그날 밤에 경찰이 그녀를 풀어주지 않았더라면 그녀는 잭더리퍼를 만나지 않았을지도 모릅니다.
Another thing happens that very same night. Probably Jack's busiest night. So the Ripper had written a message on a nearby wall in chalk. And it's a very odd message. It said, "The Jewes are the men that will not be blamed for nothing." Jewe spelled J-U-W-E-S. So not Jews, okay? We're going to walk down Artillery Passage, one of the best preserved Victorian alleyways in London.
좁고 어두운 골목. 상상력을 발휘해보세요. 어느 안개가 자욱한 밤에 한 여성이 그 어두침침한 불빛 아래 서 있습니다.
The 9th of November, 1888. And that morning, Mr. McCarthy, Mary Kelly's landlord, this is that Mary is behind with the rent. Mary Kelly's room would have been close to where we're standing now, very small, just 12 foot by 12 foot. So literally just enough room for the bed. The rent collector is knocking on the door. "Come on, Mary, I need the rent." And there's no response. He's probably thinking, cheeky madam, bet she's hiding. They all do this on rent day. So rent collector puts his hand through the broken window, grabs the curtain, and pulls it away. But the sight that he sees is so disgusting. Because lying on the bed was the butchered remains of Mary Kelly. She had been skinned to the bone. Every organ had been removed from the body. The heart was torn from the breast, taken away by the killer. On the bedside table were piles of her flesh. Hanging from the picture frames in the room, like Christmas decorations, were Mary Kelly's intestines.
그녀는 실내에서 살해당한 유일한 피해자였습니다. 그녀도 매춘부였죠. 겁먹은 그녀는 거리에 나가지 않고 집에서 일을 하다가 당한 것입니다.
What happens next? Nothing. Jack disappears back into the shadows from whence he came, leaving us with a very big mystery.
잭더리퍼는 130여 년의 세월이 지나는 동안에 많은 이들의 상상을 불러일으켰습니다. 하지만 결국은 미제 사건으로 남아 있습니다. 최근에는 피해자 유품에 묻어있던 DNA 검사로 동네 이발사 에런 코즈민스키가 범인이었다고 미디어에서 다루었지만 이 검사가 핵 DNA가 아닌 상대적으로 특이도가 낮은 미토콘드리아 DNA 추출을 대조해 본 것이기 때문에 DNA 서열이 서로 유사한 사람이 여러 명 많이 있을 수 있다는 만큼 아직까지 정확한 신빙성을 장담하기 어렵다는 것이 법의학자들의 의견입니다. 정황상 그가 유력한 용의자라는 것에는 동의하지만 증거는 없습니다. 제 이번 투어 가이드는 많은 영국인들과 마찬가지로 왕실 음모론에 힘을 주고 1970년대에 팽배했던 왕실 음모론과 프리메이슨의 책임을 지우려고 합니다. 하지만 이 또한 증거 불충분이고 용의자 왕실 의사가 1887년 범행 전부터 몸이 불편했다는 이유, 범행 동기와 잔혹성에 대한 설명이 불충분 등등등 역시나 결정적인 것이 아니라는 의견이 많습니다. 이 밖에도 많은 용의자들이 있지만 현재까지도 밝혀진 결정적인 확실한 증거는 없습니다. 아직도 잭더리퍼는 우리들 상상 속에 살아 있습니다. 오늘은 영국 런던의 이색체험 잭더리퍼 투어를 함께 가보았습니다. 그럼 역사 덕후 저는 다음에 더 괴상한 투어로 찾아뵙겠습니다. 다음에 만나요. 빠이.